After the last two speakers, I think I need to join Toastmasters. So I'm going to read. I only knew Andy for about 2 years. He was a really awesome guy. One of the first times I officially met Andy, Joe and Nicole were living at Andy and Sharon's house. I was picking up my daughter, Nicole. Knocked on the door and heard it sounded like a pack of wild dogs rushing at the door. The big door opened and the screen door was still shut, and Andy comes walking up from the stairs, and he's trying to fight off of these dogs. It was a pretty crazy sight. He got the dogs away and calmed down and opened the door and stood there silent with a big goofy grin. He was like that. He was always warm and welcoming, regardless of any of the situation. He didn't even have to say a word. When you were around him, you knew that he cared about you. When I heard the news about Andy, I couldn't help but think of all the things I liked about him. He was kind, warm-hearted, and gentle. He was funny, goofy, and he loved and was committed to God. And then there was always his keen fashion sense and his amazing sweaters. Above all else, Andy showed the love of Jesus to those around him. When Andy left this world, he was doing exactly what he loved to do, serving God. It's no wonder he's with Jesus now. We were given our time with him here, and I'm pretty sure Jesus wanted his turn. There's a couple of verses in 1 Peter that I was reading that made me think of Andy. From the first chapter. It says, "For God has reserved a priceless inheritance for his children. It is kept in heaven for you, pure and undefiled, beyond the reach of change and decay. So be truly glad. There is wonderful joy ahead." Andy is experiencing that wonderful joy tonight and forever. We'll miss you, Andy, but make some room in the vineyard. We'll be seeing you soon.
Before I get into this, I'd like to explain to all the Toastmasters in attendance here that this may be the single hardest speech I ever had to do. So I fully intend to read straight from the pages, make no eye contact whatsoever, shuffle my feet, and say a lot. I'm sitting downstairs in Dad's office, surrounded by him. His elephant collection constantly rearranged into family groups by the grandkids. His writing on various scraps of paper, old pictures of Joe and I, Mom, various generations of pets. There's a cork board on the wall with no less than 46 Toastmasters ribbons for best evaluation, best speech, mostly best table topics. Underneath the corkboard are 2 blankets he always made sure to have for the dogs, as they loved to hang out with him down there. On the top of being the quietest spot in the house, it feels like the right spot to try and put together some coherent thoughts about him. For me, one of the most important aspects of Dad that I will carry with me forever, laughter. He had a gift that he passed on to Joe of being able to crack me up with only a facial expression. When I was young and I had to give the youth speech at church, I would really try hard not to look at him while I was speaking, because he would inevitably flare each nostril at me, and then I would giggle through the rest of the speech. You've never been able to do the perfect nostril flare on command like he did, but he used it mercilessly. I have been so grateful these past few days that he was always such a verbal person, and he had a wisecrack for any occasion. Anytime I drive by a sign that says, "Slow children," I will hear him in my head saying, "It's so sad for those people, they have slow kids." Or stopped at a red light that turns green, and then the car in front of you just sits there, and after a few seconds he would say, "It doesn't get any greener, people." Right? See, you all know, you've heard it. My parents tried for 8 years to have kids, and then God gave them the best baby first. But I was always very aware of how precious that I was to him. He used to come up and put his arm around me and say, "You made me a daddy." I think he liked having a daughter. Always sent me Valentine's flowers if I didn't have a guy to do it, and was, for some reason, which I never found out, very concerned that I have whatever was the newest, best razor to shave my legs with. I never found out why this was a thing for him, but up until I went to college, he would bring home whatever newest little razor that they had on TV that he thought I had to have. I don't know. I never knew why. But thank you very much. I was always felt very at ease to be able to talk to him about anything. I could get a man's perspective on anything from a girl movie, which he pretended not to like, but would stand in the corner of the living room with his hands in his back pockets, insisting he had better things to do, but he would always come back and then watch the whole thing. Marriage, child raising, I could get his perspective on any of it. I always felt very lucky that my daddy would take the time to take me on what he called a Duncan's ride to catch up with me and talk about whatever was bothering me at the time. I think the last Duncan's ride we had was right before vacation about 3 weeks ago. He never considered his job as a father to be all done, even grown up. Another aspect of him that follows me into the future is the public speaking. Mom told me stories about how shy he was in his 20s, to the point where he found it hard to go into a store to buy milk. He didn't want to talk to the cashier. I'm constantly in awe of the strength and determination that it must have taken for him to become someone who was not only comfortable speaking in public, but to make it one of his best talents and to teach other people how to do it. He helped me with speeches since I was a kid, and it made it so I'm comfortable getting up in front of people with only the normal amount of nerves. I got 2 years in the same Toastmaster club with him. It was wonderful to have that relationship with my dad outside family and church, and to see how other people responded to his humor and his leadership and his ideas. It's so hard to try to put into words all of the aspects of him that I take with me. I will always be proud that he was the kind of person who would tell my sister-in-law on the day of her father's funeral, "I know it's not the same, but if you need a daddy hug, I'm here." His talent with words, somebody else mentioned it already, was superb. He always had an expression or could come up with one. One of my favorite made-up words of his was grunk. Grunk. He used this in reference to Mom and I, mostly Mom. He would say that she was one of the only people he knew that could be drunk and giddy without a drop of alcohol. So then, therefore, grunk. He loved a good action movie and could watch them endlessly. Any of his family can attest to that. He loved the way my son would crumple into a useless heap of giggles when tickled during play fights. He loved the way his dogs would greet him when he came home. He loved the way his son could make music. He loved the way a good back scratch would give him goosebumps on his arms. And he loved to laugh. I guess that brings me back to where I started. What I will take with me from him, the biggest thing other than his love for me. He was forever making all of us laugh with his little wisecracks, and because of that, he will be in our heads and will continue to make us laugh for the rest